Alright, so this is going to be part 10 to what if Deku had the Blacklight virus. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
They took it to 10. Let me tell you how I come through with the 1-2, kicking shit like kung fu. Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, little hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the wild fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
So in the last part, we just got to the point when they were about to do some training. So at this point, they're at the training camp, and Aizawa did that speech from last part where they were talking about how they improved with experience, but not really with their quirks, except for really only a few of them. So we get to day 1 of actual training, and everyone would do the same training that they would do in canon, except for Deku. Deku, since Aizawa knows how his quirk works, he would tell the wild pussycats, who are the trainers, he would tell them about Deku's quirk and how it works. So Tiger, which is the male member of the wild pussycats, he would tell him how his quirk works, and he would tell Deku for his training he needs to convince everyone at the camp to give him a piece of their hair so he could evolve his quirk further. So the first people he would ask would be his friends. So he would ask Uraraka and Ida first, and they would agree since they're friends, and this is a good way for them to help Midoriya out. So with the upgrades, basically what would happen is that Deku would be able to run a lot faster, and with Ochako's like kind of DNA, I think he would be able to make things lighter, but not like to the point where they become zero, like no gravity, right? So next, I think he would ask Todoroki, since they're friends now, and this would give him the ability of making some fire, but not to the point of Todoroki's fire. Only like a little, probably like the size of his palm, like a fireball, something like that. And maybe do a little blast, but that's kind of it. It's not to the point where it's like Todoroki and like he can engulf his entire body in flames and things like that. And then obviously you would also get the ice part as well, since Todoroki has both ice and fire. And it would be like the same process, right? Where he could make like ice shards or shoot out like icicles and things like that, and the longer he would like activate his power, the bigger they would get. So if he touched the ground and made ice form, the longer he did it, the bigger the ice would get. Same thing with fire, right? So those are the few ones, right? So he's gonna ask all of class 1A for their like powers, right? Or the chance of getting a piece of the hair, except for the people that he already caught it from. And I don't think he would also I don't think he would get Mineta's just yet, because he would have to figure out a way to do it, because he doesn't want to like hurt him or anything. And his like the sticky balls aren't exactly hair, so I don't know how he would. I guess he would be able to do it, since he doesn't have to directly eat it. He could just consume it. So yeah, that's what would happen. He would go up to Mineta next, and he would absorb one of the sticky balls that he has, and this would actually give him the ability of the kind of like the tendrils, but not really. If you ever play Prototype 2, when you do like a heavy attack with the tendrils, he'll do like a massive hit, and anything that got touched by the tendrils, they'll just like converge into a singularity and like go into one spot, kind of everything getting pulled. It's kind of like that, but it's like a projectile kind of. So the next person he would go to would be Soji, because he has something similar to Midoriya, where he's able to create many things on his arms and have multiple things at once. So Deku would think that this would be useful, since he would be able to do multiple different abilities at once. So he would ask Shoji, and I think Shoji would be the person that would let him. And he would get a kind of weaker version of this, where instead of like having like 6 arms, not including the originals, I think he would only get 2 extras, or be the ability to do that, and he'd be able to have 2 different types of abilities at the same time. I'm talking about like arms, not like things like armor and then like a weapon. I mean like 2 different types of weapons at the same time, like his claws and then the blade and something like that. So I don't think on the first day he would get everyone's quirk, because he would need to convince them, or he wouldn't have a chance to get everyone's like piece of their DNA, because he would have to convince them, right? And we get later on to the day where they're cooking food, and Midoriya has that chat with Todoroki and asking about how he could convince Koda on how, heroes are not that bad, because he's never met anyone that's like this. So he's asking Todoroki his opinion on it, and Todoroki says that in this case, actions speak louder than words, and if you're gonna use words, those words better be powerful. And Deku kind of reflects on this, and he wishes that All Might was here so he could convince him, right? And they had their dinner as usual, and then it would be the next day. And at this point, I think since he's able to get so many people's DNA, I think Tiger would like reward him with a piece of his DNA, right, with his hair. And when Deku would consume this, I think he would get the whip. I think it's called a whip fist, I think. I'm not sure. The whip arm that you see in Prototype 1 and 2. Because Tiger's ability or quirk is actually pillow body, which he's able to like bend like his body and stuff like that. So I think with the combinations of quirks that he's had before, I think he'd be able to make it. And I think since Deku is in a relationship with Momo, I think he would help her out with her quirk by giving her the virus. Obviously, he would do this with her consent. He would ask her, "Hey, I could give you a sample of my power, but after that, it's your responsibility to upgrade it and things like that." So with hers, she would get kind of the basic power set that he has. So it'd be things like the armor and the blades, like the blade arm and the claws and the whip, muscle mass. But all the original powers like flight and like rocket boots and the fire and stuff like that would not be included, because or if you guys want, I could include that for her power set, but it could be explored later on as she gets stronger with it. So she would get better with her creation, and she wouldn't really have a limit on what she can like consume, kind of like Midoriya. So what Deku would tell Momo to do is just go around the forest and collect any like logs or sticks or fallen leaves that are on the ground and kind of consume those, and he would kind of teach her how to do it, right? He would tell her to like go with her instincts when trying to use her biomass to kind of consume things, and eventually she would get the hang of it, and she would go around the forest and doing that. And what Midoriya would do, or Deku, is that he would try to concentrate on trying to do multiple arms at the same time, like different abilities with the weapons specifically, not things like wings or like armor, which are just like not necessarily combat oriented. So he would try to do this, but he's not very successful at first, right? He's able to have multiple arms, and he's able to have like muscle mass, but it's like hard for him to chain that with other like abilities. He could do it for like a second, but then it like starts to fade out pretty quickly. So he tries to continue this, and he's not really having so much luck with it. So what he does is he starts to focus more on physical training with Tiger, and they do the same thing that they did in the anime, where they do that kind of like boot camp with Tiger, but it's also mixed in with Midoriya trying to train his like quirk to have multiple abilities at once. So I think eventually he would be able to do it, and the first ones I think he'd be able to do would be muscle mass, and then another like ability, because I don't think at this point he'd be able to do like something like claws and then like a blade, right? And then later on, Pixie Bob, which is the blonde in the group of the Wild Wild Pussycats, I think she would, at this point, she would tell the class that later on in that day, they're going to have a, what's it called? A test of courage, which is they're just gonna have like one Class B kind of try to scare Class A, and it's trying to have like a little bit of fun with this boot camp. So when it becomes night, this is when they would, draw to see who would get into what group, because they go into a pair, and then they walk through the forest, right? And they have to draw for the different types of pairs. And since 5 of the students are out because of because they failed the test against the teachers, they're actually not there, so it makes it uneven or an odd number. So Midoriya would be the one left out and not have a partner. But I think that the person in the canon who got paired up with Momo was the person with the belly button laser. I forgot his name, but I think in this scenario, Momo and Midoriya would ask him to like trade, and because of that, because he's like his like persona is like French and very he's very into romance, right? I think that he would let him. He would trade, and Midoriya and Momo would go into the forest together since they're dating. So I think Deku and Momo would still be near the end of the line, since they had to switch with I forgot his name, the belly button laser kid. So they would wait, and then this is when there's fire in the distance, and you see Pixie Bob get picked up and like pulled into the forest, and this is when the League of Villains actually attack the Vanguard Night Squad or Strike Squad, I'm not sure which, but they actually like take out Pixie Bob near the beginning, and this is when they notice like the poison gas as well. So I think the part with the other students and the kind of gas goes a lot harder for them because they don't have the mask with Momo, but I don't think it's impossible since they have the girl with the big like hands to kind of push away the poison away. So I think it'd be a lot harder, but eventually I think they would win that fight. So they would see Pixie Bob getting hurt, and this is when the 2 other members of the Wild Wild Pussycat Dolls or Wild Wild Pussycats actually come in front of Deku and try to like stop him. And this is when Deku actually notices that Koda is not there. So what he does is he tells Momo to stay there and help, and he's going to find Koda. And she would agree. And he would fly off because he would know where Kota is, because he would give him that curry earlier. I didn't say it, but he would do that. This is like, that would happen around or a little bit after he had the talk with Todoroki. I just forgot to mention that. So before he gets there, Kota's just looking at all the fire, and he notices someone come up behind him with a mask, and he would say like, "Hey kid, your hat's pretty cool. Want to trade me for this mask? They gave it to me since I'm a new recruit, but I don't think it's my style." And the kid would kind of run away since it's a villain, and he would get super scared, and Muscular would be like, "Looks like we can have a little fun," and he powers up and he tries to hit the kid, but this is when Deku actually like flies in and like swoops him up. I think it would go a lot different. I don't think he would break his phone in this one because he's a lot faster and a lot stronger. And in this one, Deku would be like, "Don't worry, Kota, I'll be here to protect you," right? And this is when Muscular would come and like punch Deku through the side of the mountain, and he would be like, "Don't make promises you can't keep." And like a second later, Deku would walk out with his armor on, and this is when Muscular would be impressed and say, "Hey kid, before I kill you, do you know where this kid named Bakugo is?" And Deku would be thinking like, what do they want with Bakugo? And if you don't know, it's because his performance at the kind of sports festival, even though later on he becomes more calm and less hot-headed, they don't know that. They still think he's like that. This is when Muscular would do another series of punches towards him, and Deku wouldn't really he would block it and not really feel anything. And Muscular was like, "Huh, looks like you're a lot tougher than you look. Looks like I'm gonna have to go all out for this." And this is when he makes his muscles even bigger in all parts of his body instead of just his like upper like body, right? And this is when Deku starts to feel a little bit of the knockback and things like that, so he starts using his muscle mass to kind of fight him back with, but it's not enough to injure him, or it's not enough to like do any serious damage. So he starts using like 3% of his like all for one or one for all, like 3%, and this knocks him to the ground, like through makes like a small crater, right? And Muscular's thinking in his head like, how could this kid be so strong? I could barely even touch him. He was just playing with me. And he would just get more mad, and he would buff his like form even more. And he was thinking to himself like, if I can't get him, then maybe I could use the kid as a hostage. And he says it to Deku like, I might not be able to beat you, but are you fast enough to save that kid? And he goes, and this is when Muscular goes past Deku and actually tries to go for Kota. But Deku, seeing this, he's not able to go in front of Kota fast enough. So what he does is that he uses his blade arm to cut off Muscular's arm that was about to punch Kota. And Muscular's taken back by this, and he starts like bleeding heavily. He's like, "What the hell did you just do?" And his arm would be on the ground, and I think Deku would consume this using his like biomass. And at this point, I think Muscular would be scared out of his mind seeing just what happened, and I think he would pass out due to the loss of blood. And Deku would go near him and kind of heal him, but not like he would basically close up the wound so he wouldn't bleed anymore, but he would still be pretty knocked out for a bit, like the same amount of time that he would be in canon. And this is when Kota thanks Deku for helping him, right? Because before he was very against heroes, And this is when Koda would explain to Deku that that was the man who killed his parents. Deku would be lost for words at this point, like, and he would be like, I don't know what to say. And he would say to Koda, come on, we gotta get you to the campsite so we could, you'll be safer there. And he uses his like flight or his wings and his rocket boots to get there, and he sees Aizawa and he thinks like this is the perfect opportunity, and he gives him to Koda, right? And he tells him that he needs to find that one member of the Wild Pussycats that has the telepathy quirk, so that he could explain what the villains are here for. When Deku gets to the place where the two members, where Tiger and the other Wild Pussycat is, I think at that point they would have beaten both the villains there, because they would have Momo there to help out, and she has some of the virus's powers. So what would happen is that he would tell, I think her name is Mandala, he would tell her why the villains are here, that they're after someone named Kachan. And after telling this, he would just fly off to go and try to find Bakugo and the others. And as he's flying through the air, this is when Tokiyami's dark shadow comes and smacks him out of the air. And this is because he still goes through that frenzy that it goes through in the anime. And this is when Shoji picks him up and explains the situation to him. And he says that we need light. So what Deku does is he tells Shoji to kind of distract him, and as Shoji's distracting Dark Shadow, this is when Deku goes behind and does like he uses the fire combined with the nitroglycerin and kind of makes a bunch of explosions around, small ones, so he doesn't light the trees around him on fire, to kind of calm down Dark Shadow. So Deku picks up Shoji and Tokiyami, and he actually continues to go in the direction he was, to go and find Bakugo and Todoroki. And Todoroki and Bakugo at this point are still fighting I forgot what his name was. He was basically the villain with the metal teeth. And Shoji and Deku would see that they're fighting someone. So what Deku would do is he would drop off Shoji and Tokiyami and try to do a sneak attack on this man, on the villain, right? He would charge his jump, just like Alex Mercer does, and he would use a little bit of One for All in his legs, and he would use muscle mass to kind of he would jump super high, and his muscle mass would be a lot stronger since he consumed the arm of Muscular, so it's a lot stronger than it should be in game of prototype and things like that. So he goes and basically does a bullet hit towards I think his name is something to do with Moon or something, I'm not sure, but that villain with the teeth, right? And it basically knocks him out completely cold, pretty badly, maybe almost too much. So they tell the situation to everyone there, Todoroki and Bakugo. They tell them the situation, what's going to happen. And I think in this version, Bakugo would be more cooperative, if that makes sense. And as they're talking to each other, this is when Bakugo gets taken away by Compress, and so does Tokiyami, since he was the closest one to Bakugo at the time. In relation to their like distance towards each other. So Deku, they would figure out that his quirk has to do with the marbles and things like that. So what Deku would do is that he would kind of rush at him as fast as he could and compress. I think his name is Compress or something like that. I'll just call him Compress, right? So he wouldn't have any chance to get away from Deku since he's a lot faster. So he would basically get tackled, and Deku would he would take whatever was in his like pocket, right? And I don't think he would be able to have enough time to switch in between, because right as Deku noticed that he took away Bakugo and Tokiyami, I don't think Todoroki would have enough time to use his eyes to give him cover. And then as all this is happening, Momo goes through the woods to kind of help people that are, that are getting attacked by the villains. And that's when she meets up with Class 1B to kind of help them out with their situation that they're in by giving them gas masks and things like that. And she still puts or she makes the guy with the welding or fusing quirk, I don't know what it was, but they're able to get the kind of tracker on the Nomu. Compress still gets away from Deku because he compresses himself and Deku doesn't know where to find him. So eventually Compress would be able to get out of there, and he would tell Darby what happened and that they've lost a lot of their crew and that we should leave, and they're not able to get Bakugo. Toga, she would still get the blood of Ochako when Deku would meet up Shoji and Todoroki and Tokiyami. When they would show up with Uraraka, I think Toga would still be attracted to Deku since all of his stuff has to do with like biomass, and it looks like a bunch of flesh and things like that and blood, so I think she would still be attracted to that. So after that kind of scenario, they would follow Toga, and this is when Kurogiri comes through and saves her, and he basically opens up the portal for all the other villains. And before that, they could before they could like catch up with them, the portal would close, and this is where Deku was not able to catch the villains. So with that being said, I think I'm going to end it here at this point, and in the next one we'll go through the fight with All For One. So stay tuned for that. We're almost at 600 subscribers. I'll probably put a poll on this video for the Momo thing, and then I did a review recently for Kaguya-sama Love is War, so go check that out if you haven't. I also did a Q&A earlier, so go check that out if you haven't. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, this is in the video. So yeah.